My name is Chloe Thompson and I'm 29 years old. The day my brother Mason and I both got our Stanford acceptance letters should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the moment I truly understood where I stood in my family. My parents celebrated his achievement with champagne. Mine barely warranted a nod. What they didn't know was that 4 years later at graduation, I would make their faces turn pale with what I had accomplished, despite them not because of them. Before I dive into how my parents' favoritism shaped my life, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever felt overlooked by the people who should have supported you most. I grew up in a beautiful colonial house in Wellesley, a wealthy suburb of Boston. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. My father, David Thompson, was a successful corporate attorney at one of Boston's prestigious firms. My mother, Karen, worked as a pediatrician at a private practice. We had the nice house, the vacations to Martha's Vineyard, and all the trappings of upper-middle-class success. But inside those perfectly painted walls, there was an imbalance that defined my childhood. My brother Mason was born 2 years after me. From the moment he could walk and talk, it was clear he was the golden child. He was naturally athletic, outgoing, and had that easy charm that made adults smile. I was quieter, more introspective, and found my joy in books and learning. These differences shouldn't have mattered, but somehow they became the foundation for years of disparate treatment. I first noticed something was off when I turned 8. My birthday party was a simple affair, with just a few friends from school, a store-bought cake, and some streamers my mom put up that morning. 2 months later, Mason turned 6, and my parents transformed our backyard into a mini sports carnival with 3 different bouncy castles, a hired clown, and personalized party favors for 30 kids. When I asked my mother why Mason's party was so much bigger, she patted my head and said, "Mason needs more social interaction, sweetie. You're happy with just your few close friends, right?" This pattern continued. At Christmas, while we both received gifts, Mason's pile was always noticeably larger. When I was 12, I wanted a microscope I'd seen in a science catalog. Instead, I got clothes and books, while Mason received the new PlayStation he wanted. My father justified this by saying, "We need to encourage Mason's interests. You already love reading and do well in school without extra motivation." Despite the lack of encouragement, I excelled academically. I was consistently at the top of my class, bringing home perfect report cards that were glanced at and placed on the refrigerator without comment. Meanwhile, Mason's B in math warranted a celebratory dinner out because he tried so hard and improved from his last C. The one person who did notice and celebrate my achievements was my maternal grandmother, Evelyn. She lived about an hour away, and our Sunday visits to her house became my sanctuary. Grandma Evelyn had been a high school chemistry teacher before retiring, and she recognized my intellectual curiosity. While my parents were often busy with Mason's sports games, Grandma would take me to museums, buy me books about women scientists, and listen intently when I talked about what I was learning. "You have a brilliant mind, Chloe," she would tell me using the nickname only she called me by. "Don't ever let anyone dim your light." Those words became my mantra through the harder times. When I turned 15, Grandma Evelyn gave me a beautiful journal bound in blue leather. Inside the cover, she had written, "For Chloe who will change the world someday. Write down your dreams here, then go make them happen." I filled that journal with my hopes, frustrations, and eventually my college plans. The most blatant display of favoritism came when we turned 16. For Mason's 16th birthday, my parents surprised him with a brand new Jeep Wrangler, complete with custom wheels and a sound system. It was parked in the driveway with a giant red bow when he came home from school. The video of his reaction even went viral in our community after my mother posted it online. When my 16th birthday had come around 2 years earlier, I received a card with $200 and a note saying, "Toward your future car fund." I ended up working 20 hours a week at the local library and another 10 at a coffee shop to save enough to buy a used Honda Civic by the time I was 17. When I finally parked my car in the driveway, purchased entirely with my own money, my father's only comment was, Make sure you're doing regular oil changes. I don't want to have to deal with any mechanical problems. The constant disparity created a strange mix of resentment and determination within me. I loved my brother. The favoritism wasn't his fault, but I couldn't help feeling invisible in my own home. I channeled that frustration into my academics and extracurriculars, telling myself that one day I'd prove my worth so undeniably that even my parents would have to acknowledge it. Little did I know then how that determination would shape my future, or that the ultimate test of it would come when Mason and I both set our sights on the same prestigious university. By senior year of high school, I had crafted an academic record that even my parents couldn't completely ignore. I maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA while taking every AP class our school offered. As captain of the debate team, I led our squad to the state championship for the first time in our school's history. I volunteered 20 hours a month at a STEM program for elementary school girls and worked my 2 part-time jobs. Sleep became a luxury as I juggled all these responsibilities, but the alternative, being mediocre in my parents' house, seemed worse. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Davis, once found me dozing in the library during my free period and expressed concern about my schedule. "Chloe, you're doing the work of 3 students," she said. "Your transcript is already impressive. You could ease up a little." But I couldn't. Every achievement felt like depositing coins in a bank that might someday pay out in parental approval. Besides, I was saving for college. While my parents had started Mason's college fund the day he was born, mine had apparently been an afterthought. When I asked about it during sophomore year, my father vaguely mentioned that they were still figuring out the details. The winter of senior year brought heartbreak when Grandma Evelyn passed away after a brief battle with pneumonia. She was the one person who had always seen me, and suddenly she was gone. At her funeral, I stood stoically between my parents, clutching the blue journal she had given me years before. A month after her passing, I received a letter from her attorney. Grandma had left me a modest inheritance of $25,000 with a note saying, "For your education and dreams, my brilliant girl." I deposited the check immediately, knowing this might be my only financial support for college. As application season arrived, Mason and I both set our sights on Stanford University. For me, it represented their exceptional biomedical engineering program. For Mason, it was the prestige and their business school. My parents hired an expensive college consultant to help Mason with his applications while I worked on mine late at night after finishing my shifts and homework. The day the Stanford decisions were released in December, I was working at the library. I waited until my break to check my email, hands trembling as I logged in on my phone. When I saw the congratulations heading, I had to sit down, overwhelmed with emotion. I had done it. All the late nights, the extra work, the sacrifices, they had paid off. When I got home that evening, I found my parents and Mason in the living room celebrating with champagne. Mason had also been accepted to Stanford. "There's my Stanford man," my father exclaimed when Mason entered, raising his glass in a toast. "I got in too," I said quietly, standing in the doorway. My mother turned to me with a surprised expression. "Oh, that's wonderful, Chloe. Come join us." They poured me a small glass of champagne, but the conversation immediately returned to Mason's accomplishment, his plans for the business program, and how prestigious this was for the family. 2 weeks later, my parents called us both to the dining room for a family meeting about college plans. I thought perhaps they would finally discuss my college fund. "We're so proud of both of you for getting into Stanford," my father began, his hands folded on the table. "It's an incredible achievement." My mother nodded in agreement. "We've looked at our finances, and we've made some decisions about how we'll handle the costs." I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe they had been saving for me after all. "We'll be covering Mason's tuition, room and board, and expenses in full," my father continued. "For Chloe, we've looked into some loan options you can apply for, and with your grades, you should qualify for some scholarships." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "What?" I managed to ask. "You're paying for Mason's education, but not mine." My mother had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Honey, we only have so much set aside for education expenses. Mason's business degree will set him up for a lucrative career. It's a sound investment. And my biomedical engineering degree isn't, I countered, my voice rising. My father frowned. Chloe, you've always been self-sufficient. You have your grandmother's money, and you're good at securing opportunities for yourself. Mason needs more support to succeed. Just say it, I said, my voice cold with realization. Just say what you really mean. Fine, my father replied, his patience visibly thinning. Mason deserves it more. He's going to do something important with his life. You've always had your head in the clouds with your science experiments. We're being practical. The words hit me like physical blows. In that moment, the last tiny hope I'd harbored that they might someday truly see me, evaporated. I looked at Mason, whose expression showed discomfort but not surprise. He had known this score all along, too. I stood up from the table. Thank you for making things clear, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. I accept your decision, and I'll figure out my own path. I always have. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I made a vow to myself. I would go to Stanford. I would excel beyond anyone's expectations. And someday, I would make my parents regret every dismissive word, every overlooked achievement, and every dollar they had withheld, while lavishing support on my brother. I just didn't know then exactly how I would do it. Arriving at Stanford's campus that fall was both exhilarating and terrifying. While Mason moved into his dorm with our parents' help, new bedding, a mini fridge, and a generous monthly allowance, I arrived with 2 suitcases and Grandma Evelyn's inheritance carefully budgeted to stretch as far as possible. My financial aid package covered about 60% of my tuition, and I'd secured a modest scholarship. The rest would come from loans, my inheritance, and whatever I could earn. Within my first week, I secured a job at the campus library, working 15 hours a week. By week 2, I'd added another 10 hours waiting tables at a restaurant just off campus. Even with these jobs, I calculated I would deplete my inheritance by junior year. I selected the cheapest meal plan and the most affordable dorm option. My roommate Olivia came from a wealthy family in Los Angeles and seemed bewildered by my constant work schedule. "Don't your parents help at all?" she asked one night as I returned from a late shift, exhausted but still facing hours of homework. "They believe in self-sufficiency," I replied, the explanation I'd crafted to avoid the pitying looks the truth would bring. Meanwhile, Mason pledged one of the prestigious fraternities, his dues and social expenses covered by our parents' monthly deposits. Occasionally, I'd see him at campus events, tan and carefree, surrounded by friends. He wasn't a bad student, but he approached college as much for the experience as the education. His schedule allowed for parties, intramural sports, and spring break trips to Cancun. Mine consisted of classes, work, study, repeat. Despite these challenges, I excelled academically. The biomedical engineering program was rigorous, but I thrived in its intensity. By the end of freshman year, I had the highest GPA in my cohort and had secured a coveted undergraduate research position for the summer. My parents called occasionally, primarily to check on Mason, but including perfunctory questions about my studies. When I mentioned my research position, my mother said, "That's nice, dear. Did we tell you Mason's been selected for a business leadership retreat in Napa Valley?" During sophomore year, I met Professor Anya Sharma, who would become instrumental in my journey. A pioneering researcher in biomedical engineering with a focus on early cancer detection, she noticed my work in her advanced cellular engineering class. "Ms. Thompson, your analysis of the membrane permeability factors was graduate-level work," she told me after class one day. "Have you considered applying to my research lab?" Working in Professor Sharma's lab meant reducing my hours at the restaurant, stretching my budget even thinner, but the opportunity was too valuable to pass up. In her lab, I found not just a mentor, but a champion who recognized my potential. "You have an exceptional mind and remarkable drive," she told me after I'd spent 3 consecutive nights perfecting an experimental protocol. "But I worry about your pace. Even brilliant machines break down without maintenance." Her concern was warranted. The physical toll of my schedule was evident in the dark circles under my eyes. My perpetual coffee dependence and the weight I'd lost because I often skipped meals to save money or time. The emotional toll was harder to quantify, but just as real the isolation, the constant financial anxiety, and the lingering hurt of my parents' dismissal. I saw Mason less frequently as our college years progressed. When we did connect, there was an unspoken tension. Once during junior year, he stopped by my dorm unannounced, looking uncomfortable. "Mom and Dad just deposited money for my semester abroad in Barcelona," he said, shifting his weight from one foot to another. I I told them I thought it was unfair how differently they treat us. And I asked, already knowing the answer. "Dad said you've always been fine on your own, and that I shouldn't feel guilty for accepting opportunities." He paused. "Are you really fine, Chloe?" It was the first time anyone in my family had asked that question. I almost broke down, almost let him see the exhaustion and hurt. Instead, I straightened my shoulders. "I'm more than fine, Mason. I'm excelling, and I'm doing it on my own terms." During winter break of junior year, I made the mistake of challenging my parents directly. We were having dinner at home, my father praising Mason's business internship prospects when I mentioned Professor Sharma had recommended me for a prestigious research fellowship. "That's nice," my mother said before turning back to Mason. "Now about your summer housing allowance." "Do you even hear yourselves?" I interrupted, years of frustration boiling over. "Do you realize you've never once asked about my research, my goals, or how I'm managing financially?" My father set down his fork with that familiar look of irritation. "Chloe, we've always respected your independence. If you wanted coddling, perhaps you should have chosen a less abstract path." "Biomedical engineering is abstract," I said through clenched teeth. "I'm working on technology that could detect cancer months earlier than current methods. How is that less valuable than a business degree?" "We're not having this discussion again," my father said firmly. "We made our decisions based on what makes sense for this family. Not everything is about you." Those words, "not everything is about you," echoed in my mind as I returned to Stanford for winter quarter. They had never been more right in a way they never intended. Because what drove me now wasn't just proving them wrong. It was the conviction that my work could actually matter in the world. I reduced contact with my parents to brief text messages after that dinner. When they inquired about my plans for senior year, I kept my responses vague. Let them wonder. Let them assume I was merely surviving. They would learn the truth when I was ready for them to know it. And that moment would come at graduation. Senior year brought the convergence of everything I had been working toward. Professor Sharma selected me to lead a critical research project investigating a new approach to early cancer detection using nanoscale biosensors. The concept was revolutionary, yet elegantly simple. Create a biosensor capable of detecting specific cancer markers in blood samples at concentrations thousands of times lower than current technologies allowed. If successful, it could enable cancer diagnosis months or even years earlier than existing methods, dramatically improving survival rates. The university provided basic funding, but it was minimal. Most established researchers thought our approach was too experimental, too risky. Professor Sharma believed in it and in me enough to allocate precious lab resources to the project. "This is your baby now, Chloe," she told me, handing over the project documentation. "I'll guide you, but you're the primary investigator." The responsibility was both terrifying and exhilarating. I reduced my library hours, surviving on ramen and coffee, as I devoted every available moment to the lab. My typical day began at 5:00 a.m., with library work followed by classes, then lab research until midnight or later. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford. The technical challenges were immense. Our first 3 prototype sensors failed completely. The fourth showed minimal sensitivity, but not enough for clinical relevance. Each failure required redesigning, rebuilding, and retesting, a cycle that consumed weeks of work and precious materials. By November, I was running on fumes and facing the very real possibility that the project might fail entirely. One night, after everyone else had left the lab, I sat staring at our latest disappointing results, too exhausted even for tears. My phone buzzed with a text from Mason. Mom asking if you're coming home for Thanksgiving. What should I tell her? I hadn't even realized Thanksgiving was approaching. The thought of sitting at that dining table hearing about Mason's job offers while my research floundered was unbearable. Tell her I have lab work, I replied, then turned back to my data. That's when I noticed something odd, an anomaly in the control samples. Our sensor wasn't failing. It was detecting something we hadn't programmed it to find. The realization hit me like an electric current. We needed to recalibrate our approach entirely. I worked through Thanksgiving break sleeping on the lab couch. By December, we had a working prototype that could detect pancreatic cancer markers at concentrations 50 times lower than existing technologies. By February, we'd improved that to 200 times more sensitive and expanded to markers for 5 additional cancer types. Professor Sharma was ecstatic. This isn't just good research, Chloe. This could change oncology as we know it. We submitted our findings to the Journal of Biomedical Innovation and began the patent application process. Word of our breakthrough spread through academic circles, bringing attention from medical technology companies. Innovatic, one of the largest medical technology corporations in the country, sent representatives to see our prototype in action. Their head of R&D, Mr. Harrison, observed our demonstration in silence, his expression unreadable. Ms. Thompson, he said afterward, how soon could this technology be ready for clinical trials? With proper funding and a dedicated team, 18 months, I answered confidently. 2 weeks later, Innovatech offered a partnership deal $2.88 million in research funding with potential royalties that could reach tens of millions if the technology succeeded commercially. They wanted me to lead the development team after graduation. Around the same time, I received notification that I'd been nominated for the Harrison Prize for Innovation, one of the most prestigious honors for undergraduate scientific research in the country. Through it all, I told my parents nothing. When they asked about graduation plans, I gave minimal details. When they mentioned visiting campus for Mason's graduation ceremony, I simply said mine would be the same day. Professor Sharma noticed my reticence to share my success. Your parents will be incredibly proud, she said one day as we calibrated the newest prototype. I adjusted a setting before responding. They've never been proud of my work before. I don't expect that to change. But this is extraordinary, Chloe. They'll have to recognize that. I smiled thinly. That's exactly what I'm counting on. As graduation approached, I coordinated with the University Communications Department, who wanted to highlight our research in the commencement materials. I made a special request which they readily accommodated given the significance of the breakthrough. 1 week before graduation, I received confirmation that I had indeed won the Harrison Prize. The university president, Dr. Elizabeth Reed, whose first name always reminded me of my grandmother, would personally recognize me during the commencement ceremony. Everything was in place. After years of struggle, dismissal, and determination, I was ready for my parents to finally see exactly what their abstract daughter had accomplished, and exactly what they had failed to support. The night before graduation, I stood in front of my mirror, rehearsing what I would say, when they inevitably approached me after the ceremony, their faces showing that mixture of surprise and belated pride I had imagined countless times. Would I be gracious, coldly civil, openly confrontational? In the end, I decided to let the moment guide me. After all, I had earned the right to respond authentically, whatever that might be. Graduation. Morning dawned bright and clear, the California sun illuminating Stanford's iconic palm-lined avenues. I woke early after a restless night, my stomach knotted with a complex mixture of pride, anxiety, and anticipation. 4 years of relentless work had led to this day, not just the academic achievement of graduating with highest honors in biomedical engineering, but the vindication I had been working toward since that family dinner where my parents had made their priorities so brutally clear. My phone chimed with a text message from my mother. We've arrived in Palo Alto. We'll try to make it to your ceremony before Mason's business school event. So proud of both our graduates. The casual try to make it stung even now. 4 years later, and they still placed my achievements as secondary to Mason's. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that by day's end, that dynamic would be forever altered. I dressed methodically in the new outfit I had splurged on for this occasion, a tailored navy dress that projected both professionalism and confidence. Under my graduation gown, it would be invisible, but afterward, when I faced my parents, I wanted to look every inch the successful scientist and innovator I had become. My roommate Olivia, who had become a close friend despite our different circumstances, helped me arrange my honor cords and medallions. "Holy crap, Chloe, you're literally weighed down with awards," she joked as she adjusted the multiple honors designations on my gown. "Are you sure you can walk across the stage without toppling over?" I managed a smile, though my mind was elsewhere. "I think I'll manage." "Your parents are going to freak when they see all this." She continued, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "That's the plan," I replied quietly. At 9:30 a.m., I met with President Reed and the commencement organizers to confirm the special arrangements. The university had been promoting my research breakthrough heavily in their media materials, proud to showcase such significant innovation from an undergraduate. "We've placed your recognition directly before the conferral of degrees," explained Mr. Marcus, the commencement director. "President Reed will introduce you and the significance of your work, then invite you to say a few words. You'll have approximately 3 minutes." I nodded mentally, reviewing the brief speech I had prepared and memorized. 3 minutes to summarize 4 years of struggle and triumph. 3 minutes to deliver the message I had been crafting since the day my parents told me I wasn't worth investing in. "And your parents will be in the audience," President Reed asked warmly. "They must be extraordinarily proud." I maintained my composed smile. "They'll be there." As I left the administrative building, I received a text from Professor Sharma. "Remember to breathe today. This is your moment. You've earned every second of it." Her message brought unexpected tears to my eyes. In many ways, she had become the mentor and supporter my parents had failed to be. I took a moment to reply with genuine gratitude before heading to the graduation assembly area. While waiting in line with the other engineering graduates, I spotted my parents and Mason entering the seating area. My mother wore a floral dress I'd never seen before, probably purchased specially for the occasion. My father looked distinguished in a light gray suit, his Stanford alumni tie, a calculated choice for the day. His son would join the ranks of graduates from his alma mater. They hadn't seen me yet. I watched as they scanned their programs, pointing out items to each other. Did they know what was coming? Had they even bothered to read about the special recognition section where my name would feature prominently? My heart pounded so loudly I was certain the graduate standing near me could hear it. My palms grew sweaty, and for a moment I questioned everything. Was this elaborate reveal petty? Was I about to make a spectacle of family business that should remain private? No, I decided firmly. This wasn't about revenge or pettiness. This was about finally being seen, about standing in my truth after years of being dismissed and devalued, about showing not just my parents but myself that their lack of faith had been profoundly misplaced. Olivia, who was graduating in communications, broke away from her group to give me a quick hug. "You look like you're about to face a firing squad instead of getting a fancy award," she whispered. "Remember, you're the badass who's about to become a millionaire scientist. Own it." Her blunt encouragement made me laugh, releasing some of the tension that had built in my chest. She was right. Whatever happened with my parents today, I had achieved something remarkable. That truth existed independently of their recognition or approval. The procession began, faculty and administrators, in their colorful academic regalia, leading the way. As we followed them into the main ceremony area, I caught another glimpse of my parents. They were watching for Mason among the business school graduates, not even looking in my direction. In 30 minutes, I thought they'll know exactly what they've missed. The opening speeches seemed to stretch endlessly, though my watch confirmed they proceeded exactly as scheduled. Finally, President Reed approached the podium for the special recognitions portion of the ceremony. Before we confer degrees today, I would like to recognize some extraordinary achievements from members of this graduating class, she began. Stanford has always prided itself on fostering innovation that changes the world, and this year, we have witnessed a breakthrough that exemplifies that tradition in the most profound way. This was it. The moment 4 years in the making. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange calm settle over me as President Reed continued. Would Chloe Thompson please join me at the podium? As I stood and made my way forward, I saw my parents' expressions shift from polite attention to confusion. I walked with measured steps back, straight eyes focused ahead, the embodiment of the success I had fought so hard to achieve. The next few minutes would change everything. Chloe Thompson, President Reed announced as I reached the podium, her voice carrying across the hushed audience, is graduating today with highest honors in biomedical engineering. But that distinction, impressive as it is, pales in comparison to her extraordinary contribution to medical science. I stood beside her, my expression composed despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. From this vantage point, I could clearly see my parents' faces, their expressions shifting from confusion to dawning realization that this was no routine recognition. Ms. Thompson has developed a revolutionary biosensor technology capable of detecting multiple cancer types at stages far earlier than any existing method. President Reed continued. This breakthrough, which she conceived and developed as an undergraduate researcher, has the potential to save countless lives by enabling intervention months or even years sooner than currently possible. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I caught sight of my father leaning forward in his seat, my mother's hand gripping his arm. In recognition of this achievement, Ms. Thompson is this year's recipient of the prestigious Harrison Prize for Innovation. President Reed paused as applause broke out. Furthermore, her technology has been acquired by Innovatech Corporation in one of the largest medical technology partnerships in Stanford's history, with a multi-million-dollar development agreement. The applause grew louder. My parents' faces had transformed completely, now my mother's mouth slightly open in shock, my father's usual composed expression replaced by disbelief. Beside them, Mason was smiling broadly, looking genuinely happy for me. Ms. Thompson will be leading the research team at Innovatech after graduation to bring this life-saving technology to clinical application, President Reed continued. She exemplifies Stanford's mission of applying knowledge to the benefit of humanity. And now, Ms. Thompson, would you like to say a few words? I stepped to the microphone, the speech I had rehearsed countless times ready in my mind. Looking out at the sea of faces and directly at my stunned parents, I began. Thank you, President Reed. 4 years ago, I arrived at Stanford with determination and little else. Without family financial support, I worked multiple jobs while maintaining my studies and research. There were nights I slept in the lab because I couldn't afford the bus fare back to my dorm after working late hours on this project. I saw my mother's expression falter, her eyes widening at this public revelation. I share this not for sympathy, but because perseverance in the face of obstacles is the foundation of innovation. When people tell you your dreams are impractical, when they withhold support because they don't believe in your potential, you have two choices: accept their limitations or prove them wrong. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat as several people nearby glanced in his direction. I am profoundly grateful to those who did believe in me, and this research to Professor Anya Sharma, who saw potential where others saw risk, to my research team, who dedicated countless hours to our shared vision, to this institution, which provided the environment where breakthrough innovation is possible. I deliberately did not mention my family, the omission hanging conspicuously in the air. This technology exists because I refuse to accept the narrative that my work wasn't valuable enough to support. Every cancer patient who benefits from earlier detection will be proof of what becomes possible when we pursue our purpose despite discouragement. I paused, making direct eye contact with my parents for the first time. The greatest discoveries often come from those who had every reason to quit, but found the strength to continue. Whatever obstacles you face after leaving Stanford today, remember that determination can transform rejection into revolution. Thank you. The audience erupted in applause as I returned to my seat, many rising to their feet. Through the noise, I caught a glimpse of my mother wiping tears from her cheeks, my father sitting motionless beside her. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. When my name was called again to receive my diploma, the applause was noticeably louder than for other graduates. As I crossed the stage, I felt a weight lifting, not just the culmination of my academic journey, but the burden of seeking approval from those who had been unwilling to give it. After the ceremony concluded, I made my way through the crowd of well-wishers, accepting congratulations from classmates and faculty. Professor Sharma found me first, enveloping me in a warm hug. "That was quite a statement," she said with a knowing look. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Before I could answer, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find my parents standing there, Mason slightly behind them. My mother's makeup was smudged from tears, my father's usual confident demeanor notably absent. "Chloe," my mother began, her voice wavering, "we had no idea. Your speech." "Congratulations on your incredible achievement," my father interjected, extending his hand as if we were business acquaintances. "The partnership with Innovatech is remarkable. Why didn't you tell us about any of this?" I looked at his outstretched hand for a moment before meeting his gaze directly. "Would it have mattered? You made it very clear that my work wasn't important enough to support." "That's not fair," he countered, though his voice lacked its usual authority. "We always believed in your academic abilities. We just thought Mason needed—" "Don't," I interrupted, surprising myself with my calm firmness. "Don't rewrite history now. You told me verbatim that Mason deserved your support more than I did, that he would do something important with his life, implying I wouldn't." My mother made a small, distressed sound. "Chloe, we never meant to hurt you. We thought you were so self-sufficient, so capable on your own." "I was capable," I agreed. "But imagine what I might have accomplished without the constant stress of financial insecurity, without working 30 hours a week on top of my studies and research, without knowing my own parents didn't think I was worth investing in." My father's expression hardened slightly. "And yet you've done extraordinarily well without our help. Perhaps we were right about your self-sufficiency." Professor Sharma, who had been standing nearby, stepped forward. "Dr. Thompson, your daughter nearly collapsed from exhaustion multiple times during this project. She skipped meals to save money. She slept on a lab couch rather than waste time commuting. Her self-sufficiency came at an enormous personal cost that no student should have to pay." My father had the grace to look discomforted by this intervention from a faculty member. Mason finally spoke up. "Mom, Dad, Professor Sharma is right. What you did wasn't fair. I've tried to tell you that for years." He turned to me. "Chloe, I'm so sorry I didn't do more. What you've accomplished is incredible, and I've always known you were the brilliant one in the family." His sincere words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thank you, Mason." My mother reached for my hand. "Chloe, we're so proud of you. Can we take you to dinner to celebrate both of you?" I looked at her tearful face, at my father's uncomfortable stance, at Mason's supportive expression. For years I had fantasized about this moment, imagined the satisfaction of rejecting them as they had rejected me. But standing there, I realized that revenge had never been my true goal. What I had wanted, what I had always wanted, was recognition of my worth. "I already have dinner plans with my research team and Professor Sharma," I said, not unkindly. "But maybe tomorrow, before you fly home. We have a lot to talk about, and it won't all fit into one dinner conversation." My father nodded stiffly. "We can extend our stay." "Good," I said, "because I'm not interested in pretending the past didn't happen. If we're going to have any relationship moving forward, we need to acknowledge the hurt and work through it." "Honestly, we can do that," my mother said quickly. "We want to be part of your life, Chloe, especially now with all this success." "That's exactly the problem," I interrupted. "My value doesn't come from my success or this award or the Innovatech contract. If those are the only reasons you want to reconnect, then we don't have much to discuss." They exchanged glances, seemingly at a loss for words. Professor Sharma squeezed my shoulder. I should join the other faculty. Chloe will see you at 7 for dinner. She gave my parents a pointed look before walking away. I'll text you tomorrow about lunch, I told my parents. For now, you should enjoy celebrating with Mason. He's worked hard too, and he deserves his moment. As they walked away, Mason lingered behind. For what it's worth, I've always been proud to be your brother, he said quietly. And after today, I think they finally understand what they've missed all these years. I watched them disappear into the crowd, a complex mixture of emotions washing over me. The confrontation hadn't brought the simple satisfaction I'd imagined. Instead, it had opened a door not to the past, but to a future where the terms of our relationship could potentially be rewritten. Whether that would happen remained to be seen. But for the first time, the choice felt like mine to make. 2 years have passed since that graduation day, when my parents finally saw me, truly saw me for perhaps the first time. The journey since then has been neither simple nor linear, but it has been transformative in ways I couldn't have imagined. The Monday after graduation, I met my parents for lunch at a small cafe near campus. The conversation was awkward, painful, and necessary. My father, who had built his career on confident articulation, struggled to find words for his regret. My mother cried several times. I remained calm, but unflinchingly honest about the damage their favoritism had caused. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, I told them, but I'm willing to try building something new if you're genuinely interested in knowing me, not just the successful scientist, but the person I've always been. They agreed, though I could tell my father was still processing the fundamental shift in our family dynamic. Years of seeing me as secondary to Mason couldn't be undone in a single conversation. True to the plans announced at graduation, I joined Innovatech as head of the biosensor development team. The transition from academic research to corporate development brought new challenges and pressures, but also resources I'd never had access to before. With a dedicated team and proper funding, we made rapid progress moving our technology through preliminary testing and toward clinical trials in 18 months, rather than the projected 2 years. My sudden financial success felt surreal after years of carefully counting every dollar. My first major purchase was paying off my student loans, an immensely satisfying transaction that represented freedom from the burden I'd carried through college. The second was a comfortable condo in Palo Alto, my first real home that wasn't a temporary student dwelling. The relationship with my parents evolved slowly, tentatively. We established a routine of monthly video calls which were initially strained but gradually became more natural. My father, to his credit, made visible efforts to understand my work, reading articles about biosensor technology and asking increasingly informed questions about our progress. My mother sent care packages to my office, something she'd never done during my college years. The first one made me cry, not because of its contents, but because of the note, "I should have done this years ago. I'm sorry I failed you." Mason and I grew closer, our adult relationship no longer shadowed by our parents' disparate treatment. He joined a venture capital firm in San Francisco, and we met for dinner every few weeks. During one of these dinners, he confessed something that shifted my perspective. "You know, growing up as the favorite wasn't as great as you might think," he said, twirling pasta on his fork. "There was this constant pressure to justify their investment in me, to be the success they expected. Every time I struggled or questioned my path, I felt this crushing guilt, like I was letting them down after they had given me everything." His words reminded me that favoritism damages both the favored and the overlooked child, just in different ways. It was a realization that helped me view our shared childhood with more compassion. 6 months after graduation, I used part of my signing bonus to establish the Evelyn Thompson Scholarship for Women in Biomedical Sciences at Stanford, named for my grandmother, who had believed in me when no one else did. The scholarship specifically supports female students with financial need who demonstrate exceptional promise in biomedical research. When I informed my parents about the scholarship, my father was quiet for a moment before asking, "Would you consider letting us contribute to it annually?" It was a small gesture, but meaningful, an acknowledgement of the support they should have provided years earlier. Therapy became an essential part of my healing journey. Dr. Miller, my therapist, helped me understand that while I couldn't change my past, I could choose how it shaped my future. Your parents' failure to value you appropriately doesn't define your worth, she reminded me during a particularly difficult session. The challenge now is learning to internalize that truth so deeply that you no longer need external validation to feel secure in your value. That work continues, though it gets easier with time and practice. The wounds of childhood don't heal overnight, but they do gradually lose their power to dictate our choices and emotional responses. Family gatherings remain complicated. Last Thanksgiving, I hosted my parents and Mason at my condo the first time I'd invited them into my adult space. The conversation flowed more easily than I expected, though there were still moments of tension. When my mother made an unthinking comment about being so surprised by my success. Not surprised, she backtracked quickly, seeing my expression. That's not what I meant. Impressed. I'm so impressed by what you've accomplished. My father, who has made more progress than I would have predicted, actually corrected her. Karen, let's be honest. We were surprised. And that's our failure, not Chloe's. We should have recognized her potential long ago. It was perhaps the most direct acknowledgement he's ever made of their mistaken judgment, and it meant more than I could express in that moment. The professional recognition for our biosensor technology has been overwhelming. Last month, the first clinical trials began at 3 major cancer centers across the country. Early results suggest our technology can detect pancreatic cancer up to 14 months earlier than current methods, a timeframe that could transform survival rates for one of medicine's most deadly diagnoses. When the preliminary trial results were published, Professor Sharma, now a close friend and collaborator, called me immediately. This is why we do the work, Chloe, she said, her voice thick with emotion. All those late nights in the lab are worth it when you know you're giving people more time with their loved ones. Perhaps the most unexpected development in these 2 years has been my emergence as a mentor to young women in STEM fields. What began as occasional guest lectures at Stanford evolved into a more formal role with regular speaking engagements at schools and conferences. I make a point of being candid about the obstacles I faced, including the lack of family support. Success isn't just about intelligence or good ideas, I tell these young women. It's about persistence when faced with discouragement. It's about believing in your work when others don't see its value yet. After one such talk, a young undergraduate approached me with tears in her eyes. My parents think engineering is a waste of time for women, she said. They're only paying for my education because they expect me to switch to business or education eventually. I recognized myself in her words and the pain of having your dreams dismissed by those who should nurture them. Their limited vision doesn't define what you're capable of, I told her. Use their doubt as fuel for your determination. As for my parents, we continue our cautious rebuilding of trust. They visit every few months now, and each time the interaction becomes a little more authentic, a little less strained. They still sometimes slip into old patterns, comparing me to Mason or expressing surprise at my accomplishments, but they catch themselves more quickly, and the genuine effort matters. We failed you, my father said during their last visit, a statement that would have been unimaginable from him 3 years ago. I was so certain I knew what success looked like that I couldn't see the brilliant path you were forging. I'm sorry, Chloe. The apology wasn't perfect, and it came years too late, but it was sincere. And in that sincerity, I found something unexpected, not the vindication I had once craved, but a quiet peace with the past that allows me to move forward without its weight. The greatest lesson from this journey isn't about revenge or proving others wrong, though I certainly did that. It's about the power of defining your own worth when others fail to see it. It's about persisting, not because you need to show them they were wrong, but because you know you're right. If you're watching this and feeling unrecognized, undervalued, or dismissed by those who should support you, know this. Their failure to see your potential says nothing about what you're capable of achieving. Let their doubt fuel your determination rather than diminish your dreams. The most powerful response to those who don't believe in you isn't an angry confrontation. It's quiet, consistent excellence that eventually speaks so loudly they have no choice but to hear it. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Have you ever been underestimated by family or friends? How did you respond, and what did you learn from the experience? Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need this message today. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the most meaningful validation is the kind you give yourself through perseverance and unwavering belief in your own potential.